so much for joining us for Macon Music. I'm Amyre Makupson with my co-host Steve Moretti.
Hello.
Steve, you and I talked about our music show. So in case anybody missed that, which I know nobody missed that, of course somebody missed that, but in case they did, what is it that we're going to do today?
So the idea of this show is to focus on local talent that we have in our community. We've got a rich music history, which everyone knows, but there's so much wonderful talent here in Macon, Georgia. And the idea behind this show is to feature each of these local artists and hopefully build our local support for these wonderful musicians and artists. So that's really the genesis behind this show, and we hope that you guys will come out and support these local artists wherever they're performing around town. And of course, some of them will be performing with Makupson. Most of them you will have heard on the Christmas songs that we've done for the light show, and I think there might be a live concert and a recording with that, but we'll get to that later on.
That sounds really exciting. So between the two of us, we're hoping to let you get to know. We're hoping to let you get to know our artists personally, and then of course, Steve has all that amazing ear for music and knows all those kind of questions. So let's just dive into it.
Well, and one of our wonderfully local talent here is Louise Warren, who has performed with Macon Pops on our Music of Macon concert that we did a few years back, and she's also on our Christmas recording. I can actually officially say it's a recording now because we're going to release it. Still getting used to that. And you'll see her perform live with us November 30th to kick off the light display. So Louise, welcome.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
Thanks
I'm
so much
so
for
honored
being
that
here.
you would invite me.
For episode 1, we said
I
season
know,
1, episode
pilot. I'm in the pilot.
We're in the pilot. So, Louise, tell our viewers, how long have you been here in Macon, and how long have you been kind of on our local music scene?
Sure, yeah. So I've been here since I was born. I am very, very local. And I've been on the scene since I was a teenager. I got into writing when I was very, very young, writing music. And ever since then, I've just had a bug for it. That's what drove me to be a performer, is just wanting to share my own songs with people, and probably a little bit of Elvis Presley, because I wanted to be able to have that much energy on stage doing stuff. So,
what kind of songs do you write?
It's all over the place. I would probably put it in the rock pop category. I love a good melody. I'm a sucker for a good melody. That's always the first thing I notice about a song. And then lyrics probably come second in that to me.
In terms of some of your inspiration, and I know that's a really broad question because it changes as you obviously grow and as an artist, but in your recent stage, this Louise 2.0, where are you drawing some of your inspiration as a songwriter?
I kind of always draw it from a lot of oldies music. I grew up listening to people like Bob Dylan and the Beatles and John Denver, James Taylor. My parents played that stuff all the time. So I grew up with that more than I did the 90s hits in the very beginning. And then I kind of just made my way to the Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys and all of that, because I do love pop music and I do love a good hook. In current years, I would definitely say Arctic Monkeys and British rock bands always catch my ear, because they just have a way with words. And they're probably at least in my top 5 favorite bands of all time. And I constantly revisit them and bands like the Libertines and the Smiths, which you may or may not hear in my music.
Smiths,
but
wow, that's going back to when I was a kid.
But I love lyrics.
Yeah.
But I love lyrics and I love melody and I love something that is really driving. And I think something I'd like to see more in music now is layers and movement in our melodies and in our music, because a lot of it has gotten a bit flat to me for my taste.
Well, it's gotten a bit cookie cutter. Unfortunately, it's more about what's going to sell as opposed to the artistic integrity of a song and of subject matter. Speaking of subject matter, twofold question: lyrically, what is inspiring you in terms of some subjects, and what are some subjects you absolutely will not talk about? Like, some people are, I'm not going to go into politics, I'm not going to write a song. Some people are all for writing political songs, or some people will stay away from certain subject matters just for a variety of reasons. But just getting inside of an artist's head.
Sure, yeah. This is the funny thing, Steve, is if I say it on camera right now, I'll never do that. Of course, that's going to be like
do it next week.
At
the
least in
first
version
thing I
2.0.
do.
Okay,
Yeah, in version
3.0 might change, but for now.
Yeah, that's true. And I appreciate you acknowledging that, because most people think you're very static with your inspirations and what you would and wouldn't do. But I think the boundaries are a lot more open now than they used to be, because when you're a young musician getting your start, you don't want to go into the uncomfortable topics. But at this point, it's really just what I feel I want to talk about and what I'm noticing in my life that's having an impact on me. So, for instance, something like seeing a family get evicted from their apartment. I write about that now, whereas before I might write about it privately and not really play that song.
Sure.
Not any real reason behind it, but just because that's more of a private thing that I didn't want to share at that time. I wouldn't say there's necessarily any topics that I consider off limits, but I do have boundaries as a human being.
Sure.
I think it's important to protect the parts of yourself that you don't want everyone to be let in on, because it's just a healthy boundary. It's a healthy border. But as far as what I usually draw inspiration from, it's just the transitions in my life tend to be the most common theme. So if I'm going from that place, like when I first started, and from teenager to young adult, that was very present in everything that I was writing. Mm-hmm. And right now it's just kind of being in my late 20s and navigating the world when, life works out how you want it to, and sometimes when it doesn't. Right. And when you're dealt hard cards, one of the songs that I'm going to play today for everybody is actually about losing my father. Mm-hmm. So, and that happened about 3 or 4 years ago. So I joke because a lot of female artists are asked incessantly of late about, is this about that guy that broke your heart? Or they're always asking those kinds of questions. And I joke that they're all about me. Every single one of them is from my perspective looking out, or from a perspective that I found interesting.
So for you, it's just as therapeutic as it is creative.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know where I would be if I wasn't a writer. Probably a lot more annoying to my friends and family, because I'm a very emotional, sensitive person. So if I can just lock myself in a room for a couple of hours on a bad day and just write it out, I'm usually good.
Do you keep a journal next to your bed?
I do.
You wake up and just like lyrics just all of a sudden, oh my gosh.
Strangely no.
Really?
Strangely no. I do what is called morning pages from The Artist's Way. If you've ever read that book, it's by Julia Cameron, really great book. And it just kind of gets my brain working. But I've learned that creativity for me is all about disciplining myself enough to sit down, and then allowing those sparks and all of those moments to happen within that realm of a discipline moment. But most people think that, I do have those moments where I'm driving or I'm walking around and something comes to me, but that's so rare. Yes.
Thank God for technology in that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I would have lost so much by now. But it's more organic when I'm sitting down and forcing myself to do it is as opposite as you'd think that would be.
Well, what people don't understand, just like practicing an instrument as a writer, you need to practice that. It's something you have to work on, that craft. And it's something that, some people just have this crazy gift and that they just have this knack. But even so, they still, just like, anybody who's playing guitar or bass or drums or horn or string instrument, they're going to practice to maintain their level of playing and to obviously continue to grow and get better. It's the same thing with writing. And I think that's something that there's a little bit of a disconnect. Mm-hmm. I feel that audiences might not realize that there is time put in to perfect that writing craft.
It's a skill. It's absolutely a skill. And I tell people that I didn't come here writing the kinds of songs that I wanted to write. I had to craft that over time. I started very young because I loved music. That was the moment that I would just come alive.
I can't believe you're in your late 20s. I remember meeting you. And
I know.
But she said it. What shocked me was like, it's so old. Like, I'm in my late 20s now. And I'm like, I wish I was in my late 20s. How old are you when you
it's the oldest I've ever been. So
that's true. That's fair. You said you started young, though. How old were you?
Writing, I always say it was a single-digit number because that's the easiest way to remember it. It was probably 5 or 6. So it was definitely by kindergarten. But I was just like any other kid. I just retained that. So, you see little kids on the playground and they're like, I love this guy, I love my mom. Like you see them do that. I just retained that. I just kept doing it. Probably because I was very socially awkward as a kid, and the swing set was my comfort zone during recess time because I just was very shy. I didn't always know how to insert myself into other people's groups, but I could always claim a swing and know that I could kind of just let my introverted playground go wild and my imagination go wild. So it made me a little bit more awkward as a kid, but it definitely made me very creative.
Well, and I'm sure as an artist, we had a show a couple, I guess it's almost 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago from today already?
Yeah, I
already?
guess so.
Good
Yeah.
Lord.
Time is a funny thing, Steve.
It is, man. It's just like,
keeps
stop
on
that
moving.
train, as John Mayer would say. But we had a country show with 2 local artists,
Yeah.
and that feeling, and I remember in rehearsal, Josh Carson was tearing up hearing one of his songs with an orchestra. Tell our viewers, when you played Lavender Sound
Yeah.
and you heard it scored for the first time with a full orchestra behind you, what was that feeling like?
You're gonna make me cry just
Oh,
thinking
stop
about
it.
No,
I
I'm
like to
not.
make people cry.
I'm not even putting that on at all. It's just it was a very emotional time for me,
Right.
Because it was just after losing my father,
Right.
and his favorite song was Lavender Sound, and he was very supportive and really just wanted me to pursue it. He wanted me to pursue it wisely. He always joked about, well, go to business school, learn your legal stuff, like make sure you're not getting, in a bad situation with it, which I'm very grateful for, because when you're younger, you're like, please stop. Like, I
Right.
know, I'm good.
Right.
But when you're older, you're like, oh, I know how to read this contract and understand all of that. That's
and that's
significant.
Yeah, that is significant.
And that's something that's
Yeah.
important for just a lot of young musicians, especially that are in music school.
Oh, my
That's
gosh,
something
yeah.
that they're trying to help young musicians survive, and that's something that I know schools are working on with music business courses, and because if if you're an instrumentalist, you don't get some sort of a steady job, and
Yeah.
you start doing some contract work, or you are a freelance person
Yeah.
and you're handed a contract to be part of a project that is either going to be recorded or televised. You want to be able to know how to navigate that very tricky world.
You're an entrepreneur if you're a musician, and you have to learn the same skill set. And I think that things really started to change for me when I learned that and realized that I would have to run a business just like my mom does with her local art gallery with my family, and my father definitely did as a lawyer. You are an entrepreneur. And so coming from a family, seeing people work for themselves, I realized, okay, I'm not here waiting on somebody to notice me. I'm an entrepreneur pushing my game here. I'm pushing what I want to do.
Right.
So if I want to book the gig, it's going to have to be me going to people and talking about it. And that's how I've always functioned from the start. My parents didn't do anything for me other than advise me on their area of expertise, or an area that they were cultivating. My mom gives really great advice on just how to be friendly with people because she can make friends with a wrong number. So why would you not tap into the ability to ask her questions if you're more shy like I am? And my father was always on the legal end and had a really good ear for sound, so he would be the one in the back kind of going I think you need to turn that level up. No, it's not good enough. Come on. They were very honest with me though.
Well, that's what you want.
There was no coddling, and there was no doing it for me. They wanted it to be from me. But to go back and actually answer your question that you asked, that moment was absolutely incredible for me to hear my music put, in that stage and in that setting. There's nothing better for a writer than to hear other people on their music, or I feel, or participating with their music, because I don't do this just so I can sit in my bedroom and be isolated. I do it because I really love connecting with people, and I love talking about emotions. That's my work. That's what I view it as, is I am in the business of emotions and moments and feelings, and that's a very lucky thing to be able to say. So when I went out on stage and had that own moment for myself and got the opportunity to dedicate it to my father, there's really no other way you can describe that than gratitude and utter amazement at what we were creating.
Yeah, well, and I think music, it's interesting because of course there's always this support, support for the arts is very, very tough, especially with budgets and this and that. But Music is something that if you remove music from commercials, movies, daily life, music takes you to places that you remember.
Yeah.
There's a visual connection there. It is clearly the universal language. If anything, music, if not one of the most, is probably the most important element in a human's life. And
Yeah.
I remember I had an experience in college when there was a group from Zaire, Africa, that came to play a show. And somehow, I don't remember this, they're like, "You're going to be playing with them." I'm like, "What?" And I was playing some hand percussion stuff, and these guys could not speak a lick of English. And I remember it was one of the most profound musical experiences I've ever had, because here I'm on stage with these guys, and we are communicating just sheerly through music. Having said that, that's the thing I think people need to sort of, why it's important to go support music and local artists, is music takes you to places. Music brings back memories. You know, music gets you through a variety of times, good, bad, ugly, fantastic. It's all part of that. You're driving down the road, a good song comes on, and it takes you to a whole other place. So, it's you're right. You know, musicians are in the business of emotions, and we hope, especially with Making Pops, we can take you out of your daily hustle bustle for 2 hours and take you to a place where you can just let go, connect with artists and musicians. And that's why it's our mission too to feature local talent on, at least during our season, because we've grown a platform of an average of about 1,000 people a concert. So for our community, that's a decent amount of people to get exposed. And as I said before, you know, again, the comment that I get from anytime we have local talent on I didn't know these people were in our community. It's like they're in their little bubble somewhere, and and even coming down to downtown, downtown's actually really safe. It's really nice. It's like,
they don't give it a
what do
chance.
you think? Where are we? I mean, it's like it's not. It's anyway. That's
it's
a whole
coaxing.
other topic.
No, and that makes perfect sense, and it's coaxing people into the realization that they can be a part of this world, and that there's nothing wrong with that, and furthermore that it's not just letting them escape from their lives, but connect to themselves even better.
Right.
Because a lot of us go through on autopilot, and our to-do lists take priority, that we don't tend to our emotional world. And I feel like music is a more approachable therapy
Right. Oh, it is.
than sitting somebody down and being like, "Okay, tell me everything about your life right now." And you immediately have a little bit of a barrier up. And one thing my mom always told me growing up is that art removes that barrier and that defensiveness, so you can communicate more.
Well, music brings people together. I mean, you know, I look at our concerts, and I look out in the audience. It's a very diverse audience, not only just demographics, but socioeconomic, and music does that. It brings people from all walks of life together, and that's a very powerful thing in our lives. And I just think it's something people do take for granted. So, having said that, I think it's time for us to hear some music of Louise Warren. What do you think?
Sure.
Play a couple songs for us?
I would love to.
What are you going to be playing today?
I'm playing, 2 or 3. So I'm going to do one from an album I released last year called Lavender Sound. And the song is called Siren. And then I'm doing one from my new EP that's coming out by the end of this year called Reach. And it was the one I was speaking about that was written about my father.
Awesome.
Okay, and what is Siren about?
It's about feeling like you're not good enough and discovering a love for yourself.
So it's sort of like your emotional siren going off, your internal siren?
Yeah, it's kind of like understanding that you were a bit of a people pleaser in a certain situation, and that you were trying to lure people in to love you rather than just being who you are and letting that attract whoever may come into your life. And that was a lesson I learned when I was early 20s, is that I don't want to be this siren that's like calling people to me by putting myself out there a certain way. I just want to be myself, and if it works for people, it does. If it doesn't, well, that's okay. You know, we're all able to choose what path we want to walk. Down the halls like the water for clay. In the woods there was a siren calling you out to love her, crossing my arms at horizon, begging and pleading to know her. Take a shot, give it up, honey, running out of luck. Conscious mind, call shotgun. Jump to front, hand to wood, fill them out, they all feel, waiting for the warmth of sun. In the woods there was a siren calling you out to love her, crossing my arms at horizon, begging and pleading to know her. To know her is to love her as my fate. To know her is to love her as my fate. To know her is to love her as my fate. To know her is to love her as my fate. In the woods there was a siren calling you out to love her, crossing my arms at horizon, begging and pleading to know her, to know. 3 months no coffee in the pot, just pillows sitting where you sat. I always knew you did a lot, but I never knew how big a lot could get. I still reach for you, and I call your name out when I'm not thinking to. I still reach for you. Now is my message getting through? 3 months no joke at my expense, to break us in laughter when it's getting tense. Oh, I miss that on-wing hug, silent but strong was your love. I still reach for you, and I call your name out when I'm not thinking to. I still reach for you. Now is my message getting through? Three months just felt like a lifetime. You're always in the back of my mind. Still think you're waiting around the bend, 'cause a soul like yours could never end. I still reach for you, and I call your name out when I'm not thinking to.
trouble from the start. Pitter patter so strong, put me in a knee. R1 move, jump from sweet to tart, back to poison when we are apart. Don't you dare go breaking my, don't you go breaking my heart now, baby. Don't you dare go breaking my, don't you go breaking my heart now, baby. Eat, can't sleep, can't hardly breathe. Your phantasms too enchanting, baby. God in your web, spin me away. Yeah, I'd kinda like to be your prey. But don't you dare go breaking my, don't you go breaking my heart now, baby. Don't you dare go breaking my, don't you go breaking my heart now, baby. Cross my heart and hope to die. Bad luck to you if you're making me cry. Said I don't do voodoo, I don't do spells, but if you break my heart, you might relive farewell. Cross my heart and hope to die. Bad luck to you if you're making me cry. Said I don't do voodoo, I don't do spells, but if you break my heart, you might relive farewell. Forever, baby, that's a long, long how. Ooh, forever, baby, won't do you well.
Like I said, sassy blues songs.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.